This is the ASUS Flow Z13, and there are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. At the time of this recording, this tablet, of all things, has the most powerful iGPU on the market. It is absolutely insane. Now, how powerful is it? Let me put a little bit of context behind all of this, because it's insane. The Z1 Extreme chipset, the one that's found in the ROG Ally and Ally X, that one has in their iGPU in there 12 compute units, which is pretty solid. We've seen the performance that's there, and it's honestly pretty good. Now, when we're looking at the Z2 Extreme chipset, there's 16 cores that are in the iGPU, which, does a pretty good job based off of what I saw at CES. In this thing with 40 compute units, you can do so much. It's honestly mind-boggling how much power is packed into this thing. Now, there are some trade-offs that are there, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in my full-on review. But I do want to go ahead and share kind of like a first look or an impressions video on this tablet itself. One thing that I can't do is share FPS or benchmarks or anything like that, because technically this is still under embargo. I won't be able to talk about it until late February, but I will be posting a full review that's much more in depth in terms of what I've experienced with this. When it comes down to what I do with it, yeah, I'm obviously playing games, but I'm also using this for my day job. I've been doing productivity work. We're talking Adobe Photoshop, as well as Lightroom and some DaVinci Resolve. In fact, I might even edit this video on this tablet to see how well it performs.
Yeah, that did not happen.
But at the end of the day, there are a ton of things packed under the hood. Inside, the main specs that I wanted to focus on are the CPU. We're talking about the AMD Ryzen AI Max Plus 395, as well as the iGPU, the Radeon 8060S. That's the one that has the 40 CUs that just packs a freaking punch. Another thing that I wanted to go in and talk about is that this is the first piece of tech that I've ever used that has quad channel RAM. We're talking about 32 gigabytes of LPDDR5 clocked at 8,000 mega transfers. It's insane. So what does that mean in layman's terms? It means that this is going to be a fast puppy. And on top of that, you are going to be able to allocate some of that RAM into the iGPU. Now, this is the interesting part, because you can go ahead and get that 128 gigabyte version. And this is where the productivity nerd inside of me gets ridiculously stoked, because if I'm able to work and render 4K files, 6K files in the blink of an eye, that's what really excites me. So I'm really interested in seeing how this performs. Obviously, something that can handle a load like that should technically be able to handle games without any issues at all. But in terms of what I've seen while playing on this, everything cranked up to max, I'm kind of impressed with what I've seen in terms of numbers. Now, like I said, I can't share anything yet, but it's nuts that all of this is packed into a tablet form. Now, from the productivity side, it is very important to make sure that you have color accuracy. I'm happy to state that that ROG Nebula display that is on this tablet is actually Pantone validated, which means that you are going to get 100% DCI P3, and it is going to have a 500 nit peak brightness. It doesn't have HDR, but it does have the 1000:1 contrast ratio. The cool thing is that with that peak brightness, all of it is displayed on a 2560 by 1600 screen. So it is 16:10, which I know some people, it kind of rubs them the wrong way. And there are some games that aren't compatible with that aspect ratio, but it still leads towards a pleasant viewing experience and working experience if you're doing any sort of productivity on this tablet. When it comes to I/O, you have your power button, volume rocker. This button brings up the command center, a USB 3.2 Type A, and a 3.5 millimeter jack. And on the other side, you have two USB ports. These are actually USB 4, and it also supports display out 2.1 and power delivery 3.0. This is an HDMI 2.1 port, a 200 watt rectangle adapter, and then a microSD card reader. Looking at Armoury Crate, there are a couple of things that I wanted to go ahead and let you know. First and foremost, I'm currently recording this at 1440p instead of the 1600 resolution, simply because my capture card can't do a 16:10 aspect ratio. But regardless of that, I do want to go ahead and show you kind of like the ins and outs from a much better perspective than just pointing my camera at the tablet. Now, here you do have 3 different modes that are here. You do technically also have the Windows option, but this is set up from the settings tab that's here. But when you look at silent, performance, as well as turbo, these options do a pretty good job of actually letting you know more or less the performance that you could expect. You do have a manual mode that will will allow you to actually take the wattage and knock it all the way up to 80 watts if you want to. Obviously, this is dependent on what you want to go ahead and do with this, but you can technically push this to the max. And the performance is impressive. Let me just leave it at that. It is very, very impressive. Now, there are other options that are here, like Aurora Sync, which allows you to change the RGB. There are also wallpaper options if you wanted to download that as well. Now, the cool thing is that there is also scenario profiles. Now, with scenario profiles, I absolutely love this because you can tweak everything down onto an app by app basis. Now, by default, the profiles that are here, they're global. So once you actually toggle on a profile, it'll be the default profile for every game that's out there. But if you want to, you can pair these up with selected games so that when you were to fire up a game, it would default to either a high profile or low profile or whatever setting you want to have in this configurations option. Now, you can see that also in the game library. This will scan all of your default directories. That way, when you download a game, everything's right then and there, and you don't have to worry about, you know, searching through GOG or Steam. You can just fire it up straight from here if you want to. And if I wanted to have a specific profile, I could pick it here, and you don't have to name it Profile 1, Profile 2. You can name it Cyberpunk 2077, and that will be the default profile that will be there whenever you fire up Cyberpunk 2077, which is a pretty cool, nifty feature. If by any chance you don't see anything here, you can technically go ahead and add the game if you want to, but for the most part, it does a really good job of automatically scanning those games that are there. Now, there are game visuals that are here that you can change and adjust however it is that you want. There is content platforms that are here, as well as different promotions and feature library and user center. But in the settings, if you wanted to adjust the way that things look, like, you know, the prime or tough gaming, or if you wanted a light theme or a dark theme, then you can adjust that as well. And there's obviously the update center as well if you wanted to go ahead and download things. For some reason, my Wi-Fi is not the best in my recording room, so I can't see this right now. But regardless of that, it does a really good job of just getting everything squared away for you, so you don't have to go around searching for things. Now, one of the cool things that I do like about this is that there's this little button that's on the side, and you can just push that and it'll start up almost a command center-esque sort of sidebar. It's called the Screen Expert, which is kind of cool. Now, in the settings, you can go ahead and see all of the different options that are here that you can toggle and change, but there is a lot more that's here for productivity and usability. So if you don't have Armoury Crate opened up, you can open that from this menu as well. But if you wanted to toggle the TDP or the operating mode that's here, you can use that as well. You can also bring up the keyboard if you needed to use it for whatever reason, and you can also toggle the microphone as well as start screen recording or taking a screenshot. The cool thing about this that I find really interesting from a productivity standpoint, and you can technically use this for gaming as well, is that you can have different task groups that are here. So let's say, you know, I wanted to select a frame layout with two different apps, right? What I need to do here is drag one app in and get that in. So let's say DaVinci Resolve, for instance, and I don't know, I'm just going to throw in MSI Afterburner just because it's there. Once I do that, I save that as task group 1, right? Not a big deal. But if I were to push task group 1, what would happen is that both applications would boot up at the same time. Now, in terms of productivity, I could see this being paired with not only, you know, different apps, but different productivity apps. So let's say I wanted to do Photoshop with Lightroom or Photoshop with InDesign. You could also add in Premiere in here. If I wanted to use DaVinci Resolve with like a music app, I could. When it comes to gaming, obviously you have MSI Afterburner. You could pair that with whatever game you are playing at the time. You could also pair this with lossless scaling. So you could load up lossless scaling as well as the game that you're playing at the same time. That way, all you got to do is click scale and it'll start working on whatever it is that you're doing. Frankly, it's a pretty nifty feature. I don't think that there are too many reasons not to utilize something like this in a productivity workflow, but it is something that I feel like has the potential to really make things easier for you if you're using this for productivity specifically, but you can use it for gaming, like I mentioned. All right, let's talk about actual real world performance that we can see, minus the benchmarks and the FPS and all that. But when I booted up Black Myth: Wukong, I was really surprised with what I saw. By default, the system did push it to the medium preset, and this is using the turbo TDP mode that is there, or the operating mode on this tablet. Any sort of screen tearing that you do see on the footage here is actually tied towards the capture card and not the actual tablet itself. The tablet just ran beautifully. You didn't have to worry about anything, and really there wasn't anything to call home about in terms of issues. It just ran great. Now, obviously with Black Myth Wukong, it is a, more demanding title. When I did go to Baldur's Gate 3 though, things ran relatively smooth as well. And although this doesn't support FSR 3 or 3.5, and I don't even know if we're going to see an FSR 4 support through this game, it didn't have any issues rendering the game as is. I do also want to go ahead and state that this did by default push the preset to Ultra on this game, and I am currently in Act 3. For those of you that do not know, Act 3 is much more demanding than Act 1 or 2, simply because there's just so much happening on screen. But regardless of that, I didn't have any issues running the game as is. Now, when it comes to other titles like Metaphori Fantasio, I just went to the most populated area in the beginning of the game. That way you can get a sense of how you can expect the performance on here. All the settings are set to maximum and the frame rate is uncapped, so you can see how things are going to go ahead and run with that. Now, God of War Ragnarok, when I booted this up for the first time, by default, it went on to high, but the frame rate definitely dipped below 60 FPS, and I could see it with the naked eye. So I did turn on frame gen, and once frame gen was turned on, everything just ran smoothly. I didn't have to worry about anything. There were a couple of hiccups here and there when I was moving throughout the world that was there or in the middle of fights, but I think that as more drivers are updated on this and things get squashed out, the performance will be on par. So I'm looking forward to the updated drivers and the final version or production model of this tablet. This keyboard cover that is here is actually pretty solid. I was kind of surprised because I expected something that was a little flimsy, but in terms of quality, it does a really good job of not only protecting the screen whenever you're traveling, but if you wanted to use this for production work, you could. It just feels like a normal laptop keyboard, and the actual actuation of the keys feels pretty satisfying as a whole. Now, obviously, this is a tablet. You can use it in tablet mode and it'll just do the job just fine. And since you have that command center button, you can bring up the keyboard whenever you want, and you don't really have to worry about things. But if you did want to go ahead and revert back to actually just using that, boom, it just snaps right into place, and you can just go ahead and use this like a normal laptop. Now, I can't wait to show you guys the actual numbers and benchmarks on this thing, because this thing is an absolute beast. I don't know what ASUS was thinking when they built this thing, but it is absolutely massive in terms of what you can expect with this, because like it's a tablet. Like I wouldn't expect that out of a tablet, and here we are with a tablet that's like a complete beast that goes up against laptops. And I don't know, guys, I don't know, but let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you want to hear my thoughts on this, then by the time that the actual unit comes out, I'll probably set up a link or whatever in the description. But if you want to hear my thoughts on the ROG Ally X from ASUS, and then click this video over here. And if you want to hear my thoughts of the MSI Claw 8 AI Plus in contrast to the ROG Ally X, then click this video over here. And until next time, guys, I will see you on the next one. Peace.